Events are related to browser object. Events are related to browser, not to any element. Events are related to browser, not to any element. So all JavaScript events are browser events. All JavaScript events are browser events. They are all browser events. So event is not related to any element like a button or a text box. They all belong to browser. So text box, buttons, checkbox, radios, all these use those events. So what is the problem now in React is React cannot use these browser events. React cannot use browser events because React is using a virtual DOM. So then what are the events that React is using? In React also, you are using on click, on change like that. So here you should know. So React events. So the concept of React events. So what is the concept of React event is actually React cannot use browser events. Browser events. That is the first thing. Generally in JavaScript, whatever events you use, they are browser events. But React cannot use those browser events because browser events belong to actual DOM and React cannot use actual DOM. Then how it is using the events? Actually, React have synthetic events. React have synthetic event library. React have synthetic event library which provides all element events, all events. React have synthetic event library which provides all events that map to browser events. That map to browser events. So React cannot use the browser events directly. Then in React, what they have done, they designed a special library called synthetic event. So this synthetic event library provides events. Those events will map to the browser events. That means what? You are having a event called on click. This event is a synthetic event. This event is a synthetic event actually. So we say type means like this, derived. It is derived from synthetic event. Synthetic event is the base class. It is the base class for events. All events of React are present in a synthetic event. They are all present in that synthetic event. This synthetic event is translated into on click, which is a browser event, which is browser event actually. This synthetic event belong to whom? Synthetic event belong to virtual DOM. Browser event belong to actual DOM. So that is the concept actually. So in React, the events are synthetic events. So those synthetic events we are using in React, which is translated into browser event. So you can see the difference. On click is in camel case. In synthetic event, it is camel case. In actual browser event, it is in lowercase. So if you write on click like this, React cannot use it. React cannot use this. In React, you have to use what? On click as camel case. That's the basic point. So every event of React is derived from a synthetic event library. So how to use these synthetic events? We will see now. How to use the synthetic events, how to manage the synthetic events. Right? Let's see. So I will go to components and add a new component, event demo. So event demo.jsx, and let's add the code. So export function event demo and return a simple container. Okay. So we have class name container fluid. Okay, fine. This is event demo. Let's put it in the startup. So we are having this event demo. Okay. So that is the event demo, and it is in the startup. So let's go to event demo. Here we are adding a button. So insert. For that, we need to write a event. Yesterday I showed you complete concept of handler, listener, and event arguments. Right now, how it works in React, we will see that. Now we are writing a function and insert click. Insert click is a function, and in this function, we are having some console log. So record inserted. Okay. Now this function need to execute when user clicks on button. As we already discussed about sender subscriber. So who is the subscriber here? Insert click is the subscriber. So how to point towards that function? We have to use in the button on click. On click we are using. As I told you, on click, it is mapping, it is pointing towards a function. Function pointer, na? We discussed that it uses a mechanism. What is it? Delegate mechanism. Delegate is a function pointer. function pointer. So you are not calling the function, we are pointing towards the function. So what is the function name? Insert click. We don't use a parenthesis. Why we are not using parenthesis? We are not calling the function, we are pointing towards the function. And function pointer needs only function name. It needs only name. It doesn't require anything. That means in JavaScript, you are using the parenthesis. But here in synthetic events, you have to just mention the function name because synthetic event is delegate designed. If it is delegate designed, you don't need to define in parenthesis. You have to just define a name. Function name is enough. So that means it will point towards the function called insert click. What is specialty is this event on click. Let's see how it is derived. I will right click on click and go to definition. And you see on click is a mouse event handler. It is derived from mouse event handler, right? Now right click on that mouse event handler, go to definition. This mouse event handler is derived from event handler. Go to event handler and go to definition. Event handler is derived from synthetic event. It is extending synthetic event. What does that means? You know the word extends na? In JavaScript classes. What extends is inheritance. So it is inheriting this synthetic event base class. So later you will learn actually React is built with TypeScript. React internally designed with TypeScript. Later you will learn TypeScript also. So these all are designed in TypeScript. And a synthetic event is the base. This is the base. Right click and go to definition. This is synthetic event. And observe carefully, this synthetic event is already having an event argument. It is extending base synthetic event. Go to base synthetic event definition. You can see this base synthetic event is already having a event argument. And see the properties what it is having. It is having the properties. It is having the properties like target. Yesterday I showed you event listener. In event listener, it is not possible for this and event. We have only one argument. Event handler have two default arguments. Event listener is having one argument. How to access event details directly? How to access object details by using target? So what you observe here is you need to observe here the concept. What we have to observe here is generally we need to observe the concept that here when you are dealing with the event, you need to observe that the every synthetic event is already having a event argument inbuilt. You are already having an event argument inbuilt, so you don't need to pass any argument. You don't need to pass any argument. By default it is having a event argument. So this insert click is already having, means I am saying that this insert click already having an, so this insert click is already having an event inbuilt. In JavaScript, what you done yesterday I showed you na, in JavaScript what we done, insert click, into that we are passing this and we are passing event. But in In React, this event handler is already having this event inbuilt. So you don't need to pass anything. Just you have to collect it. That means you can collect the event here. You have to just collect the event here. And that event contains two details. One is event related details, another one object related details. So here we are accessing, like, suppose exposition. How to get the exposition? E dot client X, client X. In the next line, I want to get control key, CTRL key. Then how do we get that? E dot what? CTRL key. Okay. In the next line, we want the button ID. Button ID. So we have E dot what? Target dot ID. Target dot ID. So here button have an ID called suppose BTN insert. Okay. Now you see in the design, let's go to inspect. Let's open this console here and let's check on insert click. It should get the details and show. Same what I showed you yesterday, but yesterday I showed you the JavaScript way. The JavaScript way, how the arguments are handled, how the events are handled. Now in React, what is the new thing you have to know? The new thing is very simple. So what you need to know, synthetic event. Synthetic event is base for all events in React. Synthetic event is base for all events in React. It have a default event argument. It have a default event argument for every event. For every event. Hence, subscriber can access the event arguments directly. Subscriber can access the event arguments directly. So the default event argument contains both element and event details. Element and event details. It contains both element and event details. So the default event argument contains both element and event details. So how it is going to work is, we have a function. First, we have a button. On click is insert click. This is a binding insert click. So we have some insert. This button is having an ID as some BTN insert something. So we have a function insert click. On insert click, we can just collect the event argument. You can access e dot client X, e dot client Y, e dot ctrl key, e dot target dot id, e dot target dot name, e dot target dot class name, like this. So in the event handler, you don't need to pass any argument. By default, every event handler have a argument. That argument is internally passed. You have to just collect the argument and use it. So that is okay. That is very good. In JavaScript, we used to pass event argument, and in React, you don't need to pass an event argument. By default, it have an event argument. You have to just access the event argument and use it. That's very good. Then the question is, then how you pass your own arguments? That means now in React, how to pass custom arguments? How do you pass the custom arguments in React? So default arguments are automatically sent, and we have to just collect them and use them. So up to this, I will give an example here. Event demo.jsx. I will copy this example. I'll copy that example here. So this looks okay, very good, because in JavaScript, we have to pass our arguments like this send event. Here automatically they are sent. So you have to just collect and use it. How about default arguments then? How do we send the default arguments? So that's fine. Custom arguments now. Now the question here is, so how to pass custom arguments in synthetic events? How to pass custom arguments in synthetic events? How do we pass our own arguments then? How do we pass that? Let's see. So default arguments working fine. Already you saw that. How you pass your own arguments? That means we need to send our own arguments. For example, on insert click, I am opening the parenthesis, and into the parenthesis, I am passing some string, welcome, and I am collecting that string here as str, and I want to print that string here. That means I am just using so console log and str. That means I am trying to pass custom argument. I am trying to pass my own argument. So that means actually yesterday you saw in JavaScript we can do pass like that. Already I showed you that. Now here let's try this. You see now we have an error. You can see that that is directly printed. The argument is directly printed. I am clicking insert. Insert is not working. This is directly printed. That means whatever the message you given here, it is not working on insert click. If you define like this, automatically it is going to print it. It is automatically printing. It is not working on insert click. It is working on mount. It is working on mount. You see, I refresh my page. You can see it is working on mount. I am not clicking, but it should work only when user clicks that button. Then how do you pass the events? How do you pass the custom arguments? So If you want custom arguments, then what you have to do is here to pass the custom arguments. Let's say this insert click is written like a function. That insert click is written like a function. So this function have to define, this is the function. That is the function structure, arrow technique. So what is this parenthesis? Function declaration. What is this implies? Function return or function definition. You learned arrow na in JavaScript. This parenthesis refers to declaration. This arrow implies indicates function return or function definition. If I write like this, it becomes a function definition. If I put only this, then it becomes a function return. Function return, function definition. It will work for both return as well as definition. Now in the definition, we are accessing what it is, insert click. And insert click, into that insert click, we are passing some value. Into insert click, we are passing a value. Welcome, we are passing like this. So when I pass custom here now, you see now, and we want to collect it here. We want to collect that here, MSG, suppose, and I will print that MSG here. So here, welcome to React, something like this. Now you see, I refresh here. Currently, it is not printing anything. I click on insert, then it will collect that and use it. So this is how we send a custom argument. How do we pass custom arguments into events in React? So then you have to use a different technique. Directly, you cannot use a simple delegate mechanism because through delegate mechanism, only default arguments are passed. You need to use another mechanism. What you have to do is, can you tell me what I done? We have to call the function. We have to call the function. So to pass custom arguments, so you have to call the function on specific event. You have to call the function on specific event and pass the arguments and pass the arguments. You have to call function on specific event and pass the arguments. So syntactically, it will be like this. Button have on click is equal to, we need to define a function with a definition. This will use insert click. On insert click, we have to send, so welcome to React something. You can send any kind of content. So it may be string, number, boolean, object, array, anything we can send. Now, can we send multiple arguments? We can send multiple arguments. So here, function insert click. This is expecting the message. We can log the message. So how do we pass custom arguments in synthetic events. Now the question is, now you designed event handler in such a way that it will call the function, and into the function it will pass the parameters. Now the question here is, okay, it is working fine. So I will use here another argument, that means comma some 45,000. And here we are accessing some price, and we want to print the price slash n. So we will put here. So we will put here. So message, that is MSG. And in the next line, we want to print the backtick. I will use, yeah. Okay, here in the next line, I will print price. Price is whatever the price. Now you can see here, when I click on insert, then it have to get both. We can pass multiple arguments. Now the doubt is how to pass both default and custom. How to pass the default argument. Previously, default argument was internally available. You are directly accessing the default argument. It is internally available. That means, what do you say? I can declare ENA and I need to access that E here. So that means X position. How do we get that? E dot what? Client X, client X. So you see here now, I am clicking on insert. It's not working because you are not using a function pointer anymore. You are using a function call. That means now synthetic event is not passing the default argument. So that means previously only default argument. There is no custom argument. Now currently you have only custom argument. There is no default argument. Then how do we send both default and custom argument? How do we send the default and custom arguments? It's nothing complex. Actually, this is synthetic event. This synthetic event is already having a default argument. What is the default argument? Event. That default argument you can pass into the memory of function. The new function that you created, into the memory of that function, you can pass E. You can pass this. Actually, this refers to what? Event. It's not a keyword. You can use any word, X, Y, Z, anything, but it refers to event. And this event we will pass here. First string, second number. After that, I will pass that event. This event contains the default arguments. The default arguments. So that we are collecting here. That we are collecting here. Order is important. You pass as last, you have to collect last. You pass as first, you have to collect first. That depends. Okay, now let's refer this now. Let's refresh and click on insert. It's working fine. That means how do we pass the default arguments and the custom arguments? Both are required. Here we are having default argument is this one, custom arguments are this. We can handle both of them. So here the point, another question is how to pass both default and custom arguments. So you can configure a function declaration in handler. You can configure a function declaration in handler which uses event as default parameter, which uses def event as default parameter. So the function call can use both custom and default parameter. The function call can use both custom and default parameter. So if you are looking only for default parameters, you don't need a function call. If you are looking for some default parameters along with custom parameters, then you need this. Syntactically, how you define. So how do you define this button? On click here, we need to define a function. Insert click into that. Welcome and into that event. Now the function insert click is expecting MSG and E. So console log, it is using the message. It is using E dot client X, or it can also use E dot target dot ID. I'm just roughly giving all of them. So we can have default arguments and we can have custom arguments. So how do you pass the default and custom arguments in JavaScript and in React? A small difference is there. So that is related to event. Yesterday, you saw how JavaScript manages all this. The same now you are looking at React, how it manages. Now in JavaScript, you already learned the same you implement here also. What you learned in JavaScript, the same you will implement here also. So what is another important question is, what is event propagation? and how to prevent. Already you learned na, in JavaScript. What is event propagation? So what you learned about event propagation in JavaScript, the child event will fire up the parent events also. The child events will propagate the parent events. That's a very common thing in JavaScript, right? In JavaScript, you learned about event propagations and you learned how to control them. The same thing you have to do here also. So what is that event propagation? In JavaScript, what you learned, for example, so how do we manage that? So we have a now, and this now is having some class name bg dark and text white padding 4. In this, we keep a heading like so nav bar. And in this, we have a button. So class BTN warning BI search. So now actually we have this simple design. The nav bar and a search button is there. Now what happens is I have a function. The function is a navbar click. On navbar click, I will put an alert and I say navbar clicked. Okay. And we have a function search click. On search click, we will put an alert search clicked. That's the message. And navbar have a on click. On navbar click, it should access navbar clicked. On button on click, it should access search click. That's the general thing. So now you see here, I click on navbar. So when I click on navbar, so navbar is clicked. That's good. I click on search, then search clicked. That's good. But navbar also clicked. But I haven't clicked the navbar. You know that in JavaScript you learned this is called event propagation. And how to prevent also you learned. How to prevent, tell me. So every event have a method called stop propagation. Through that method, you can stop the propagation. That means child element events will simulate the parent. When a child element is triggered, it will simulate the parent also. We should stop it. Only child should work. It should not simulate the parent. So it should stop propagating its event to the parent. So button is a child. When I push the button, navbar is also pushed. So that should not happen. It should stop after this. You know, in JavaScript, how to control that? On search click, you will get a event argument here E, and that event argument have a method. You learned about that method. What is it? Stop propagation. Propagation. That's how we do. That means now what search click you will do after the functionality, it will stop. It will not trigger the parent. If you don't do this, the child events will trigger the parent events. That's a very common thing. Everywhere in JavaScript, you will face this problem. And you learn the solution also for that. Same you will use here. I click on navbar and only navbar is clicked. And I click on search and search is clicked. And OK, navbar is not clicked. That means we are stopping the propagation, only search is clicked. That is the correct way. Otherwise, the parents also will fire up. You click on child, it will fire up. It's a general thing. Unfortunately, many JavaScript people don't know this. So that is the reason in a React like interviews, they ask this question. Because they know that several people who learned React, they are not good in JavaScript, right? They know that from YouTube or here and there, they learn JavaScript and come to learn React. And they think that they know everything in JavaScript and they are React developer. React developer means a genius in JavaScript. And in interviews, that is where people fail. In interviews, people don't fail in React questions because anybody can answer React question. After all, React is a library. For a software developer, asking questions on a library is a very silly thing. That means anybody can answer. A small kid also can answer questions on library, right? The problem is with language. That's the reason majority React interviews concentrate all the questions only on JavaScript. 90% of your React interview will be on JavaScript only. And sometimes we have seen in MNC like interviews, entire interview of 1.5 hour happen only on event concept. That means so many topics are there here to ask you and test your skills levels up to JavaScript. Event handlers, event listeners, event arguments, default arguments, propagation, so much is there. So what is this event propagation? How to prevent? So the answer for this event propagation is a general mechanism where the child event simulates and triggers the parent element events the parent element events parent element events. So you can prevent the propagation from child to parent by using the event method stop propagation. By using the event method stop propagation. That's a general event method you have in JavaScript. The same you have to use here also. So syntactically, you have a function, child event argument will be there. It will have e dot stop propagation. That is the stop propagation option. So I will copy this one, event demo.jsx. This is stop propagation. That is an example of that. Okay. And one more you learned in JavaScript. What else? Prevent default. You learned that prevent default also in JavaScript events. What is prevent default? Huh? So some HTML elements have a default event. You don't write the event, they have the event. Which element? Generic element. You learn generic elements, na? In HTML, we have generic elements. What are generic elements? Submit, reset. These are all generic. Why they are called generic? By default, they have some event. By default, they have some event. We don't want them to have that event. So that is another thing you learned in JavaScript. The same you have to apply here. So another question, what is it? How to stop the default event trigger for generic elements? How to stop the default event trigger for generic elements? These two are general things of same JavaScript you should remember and implement here. How to stop? So by using the event method, what is that event method? Prevent default. By using the event method prevent default. These are all event concepts of JavaScript which you have to remember and use them in React also. Otherwise, you will face some issues while working with different situations. So, what is this generic element? For example, let's say, so I am creating another option now. Yeah. So here I am creating a simple form. And inside this form, we are designing a form. And inside this form, we have a text box, user name, input type text. And this text have a name as username. And we have a button as submit. And button type is what? Submit. Default button type is submit only. But strictly you have to mention the type as submit. Okay. Now you know that this submit button is a generic button. We have two types of buttons now in HTML, generic and non-generic. Generic buttons submit and reset. Why they are called generic buttons? Because they have a default functionality. For example, see what happens. So I entered some name and I click on submit, and it automatically submits the data in the URL. Because I am not writing any functionality, by default submit button have a functionality. These are called default events. These are called generic elements. That means I don't want this to happen. I want only the functionality that I have given to happen. I don't want the default functionality. Then how you stop this in your JavaScript? Same logic we have to use here. So generally on submit, where we write the event form, have a event called what is it? On submit. You know, form have two events, na? On submit, on reset. On submit, we will define here a simple function name. Suppose I will give submit click. Okay, let's write that function. The function is submit click. On submit click, I will log console.log form submitted. Submitted to server. This is the message I am giving. But actually, what this is doing extra is when I entered anything and click on submit, it is doing my work at the same time it is doing its work. Internally it have some work. When I click on submit, it is doing my work and it is doing its own work. My work it is unable to show because I used a log, and submit means it will refresh. So I can't see it. I will put an alert. Okay. Now you entered some name and click on submit. It is doing my work and it is doing its work also. Its work is what? Submitting the data in the query string. On get method, by default get na. By default get, on get it will submit in the URL. On post it will submit in the form body query string. But I don't want this to happen. Then what to do? If you don't want that to happen, in the submit event argument, you will have event dot prevent. Prevent what? Default. That's the method you have to use. That's the same in JavaScript. We do this because when you learnt in JavaScript form submits, we can stop the default events, right? So how we can do that? By using prevent default. Let's see. I'm entering some details and I'm clicking on submit. Then it will show alert form submitted. After that, it will stop. It will not do any extra work. That means we are preventing the default action and we are defining only the action to perform. Otherwise, generic elements can do default functionality. We have to prevent that. That is actually done by using prevent default. So this is mostly used for generic elements. So we have a form on submit. So we have like submit, click. In this situation, we have a function submit, click. The event argument will use prevent default. So while working with the events, we have these points. So these are generally there in JavaScript, same as it is we have to implement here because otherwise we will face problems. So while working with events, if you write parent event, child event, both will fire up. We want only child. We don't want parent to propagate. Then we have to use stop propagation. So some more are there. We will learn about them in the next level. Some more points are there, but these are basic. So finally, you learned so many technical terms. Um, event, event design patterns, event arguments, event listeners, event handlers, and what is synthetic event libraries. And in synthetic event, how the events are written, how they are handled. Stop propagation and stop default. Now you have to know different types of events. Actually, synthetic events, synthetic events are categorized into various groups. Synthetic events are categorized into various groups. And same like your JavaScript, you have what are different groups of events we are having. We have like mouse events, we have like keyboard events, So button events. Button event means mouse. Mouse button events. Mouse events are different. Mouse button events are different. We have clipboard events. We have timer events. So we have touch events. We have element state events. Like that, so many categories of events are present. Form events. Another important is form events. These are major categories, various groups. We have mouse, keyboard, button events, clipboard, timer, touch events, and all. So these are different types of events categories. And already you learned these events in JavaScript. The same you have to implement here with the syntax and technique that you learned in React, right? Those events already you know. What are mouse events you have in JavaScript? On mouse over, on mouse out, on mouse down, on mouse up, on mouse move. Am I right? So these events are not new to you. What new to you already I explained above. So these events you can now implement. You can write, you can design different examples by using these events. Anyhow, I will show one example on every category. Others you try. Because nobody in React will teach you about events. They will teach you about events basic, but nobody will teach you how to use mouse events, keyboard events, because anywhere you will not find. That means you go to any React tutorial, React websites, you will not see how to use keyboard events, mouse events, anywhere examples. Why? Because that's all JavaScript only. What you learned in JavaScript, same you will implement here. Anyhow, I will give one example on that so that you can understand. You can handle them. Initially, these are the synthetic events and these are the event categories, different types of event categories. So in that, we will see how we can manage these events. So first we will see the mouse events. Mouse events we have like on mouse over, on mouse out, on mouse down, on mouse up, on mouse move. These all mouse events actually. These are the general mouse events we are having. So how to implement these? For example, let's say one example here. Um, Suppose you have this stop propagation also example I will give. JSX prevent default example is this one. Huh? This is prevent default example. Okay. Now see the mouse events point is simple actually. You have a some Flipkart like website. In that some mobiles, okay, some mobile details. So I'm selecting some mobiles here. Okay, in the mobile details. In the mobile details, you see, let's try to design this one. This is mouse over, it is changing. That means on mouse over, the photo is changing right side. Right? We have image left and right side, this is changing. Let's do this. That is just mouse over, na? Right? So you need some images like that. Uh, let's open our project location and actually in my computer in an existing project I have some images, public images. Okay, I have some images like M1, M2, M3, some mobile images are there. Huh. Suppose I'm having here 1, 2, 3, 4 images are present. I will copy into our project folder. In our project, public images, I will copy those images. M1, M2, M3, M4. These are PNG files. I am having PNG files. Okay. So M1 to M4, I am having some images. So let's go to public. I will keep a new file, mobiles.json. It's a mobiles JSON file. And I will create an array of object. And here I will give img src. So img underscore src. Image source. And the path is present in images. In images, we have m1 dot what? JPG. That is one image. So next object, same. I will copy similar. I have 4 images. I will copy them. This is M2. This is M3. And this is M4. So we have 4 images. We need to access these images and show here. So what we will do, we will put a constant and images is an array, set images, use state. We are expecting an array of object which will have img src, which is a string type. Okay, we will put a use effect. That means at the time of loading, mounting, here we will use an axios dot what? Get from where? Mobiles dot JSON and dot then we will get response and that response data we will set images. Response dot what? Data. And we will put them here. So I will keep a div margin of 4 and this have row. In this we have a div. This have class called 2 and here we another div class as called 10. Okay, here we need to display the images. So images dot map, you read every image and for every image we will create a div and in the div we will keep a key as a image dot what? Image src. And here we will keep an image. Image source is coming from image. So dot img src. Width is some 100% and height is some 200, 100, like this I give it. Or say, yeah, 100 is okay. Now you have all the images displayed here. So image extension is PNG. Yeah? All are PNG images we are having. All are PNG images we are having. Right. Those images will come here. So I will keep this as 1 and 11. That looks fine. And every div have a class margin y as 2. Some gap will come. So I will just give a border also. Border 1. Just we'll have a simple border for them. Padding 2. Okay, like this. Just roughly I'm adding some define. Okay, and here I will give as some 70 is the height for every image is like this. Now when I move the mouse onto it, that preview should come right side. So right side, we have an image. Now this image source, we have to update. That means I will create here. I will create a simple another constant, and the constant is pick source, pick, set pick. Okay, and use state. And by default, it is a string. It is in images m1.png. And this pick I will use here for the here. So src is equal to what? Pick. I'm just using that. That means that is the default one. By default, that is there. It's very huge. So I will give height as some 400 pixel. That is fine. So that is the image we are having. Now, when mouse is over, this image should display here. That means what we have to do for every image which is left side, we will write on mouse over, on mouse over. We will write as handle mouse over. Okay, we will write the function. What is it? Handle mouse over. How to get that image source? We will use a event argument. Set image, set pick. Set pick is e dot target dot src. What is it? When mouse is over the image, it's src. We will collect and we will assign to pick. We are accessing the source and we are assigning here. That pick is displayed here on the right side. So that means when I move the mouse, that image will display here. That's what we are doing. That is basic. We have to design on mouse over. And you know CSS. In CSS on hover, how to highlight any element, we know that, right? What you will do on hover of this image, you want to put some blue color or something, you know how to do it. No need to tell. What you do, some event demo dot what CSS. In this here, we will better keep this div. This is having column 1. So dot call 1, in that wherever image is present, on that image hover, right? What we have to give? Border. Border 2 pixel solid, some blue color border we are giving. And we need to import that here. So what we have to do? Import dot slash event demo dot what? CSS. That is nothing but on hover. Some problem is that is present somewhere else. Let's put here img hover. This is okay, fine. I'm just giving that. You put in a nav bar. Actually, the border I given is div, right? Not image. You have to apply for the div, right? That you can try. You can see now it is changing the images when mouse is over. That is generally how we can display mouse over like options, right? This is an example for mouse. Similarly, we see some examples on different events, how to handle with some examples that we'll see in next session. Tomorrow we will continue. Okay. And if we finish events related examples, then we can build one app by using these all concepts. We can build one app that we will see how to do that, right? Tomorrow we'll continue, right? Yeah.